Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm William Heath. I founded a company called Cable, which is a market research company looking at IT in government. So I have the perspective of a sort of an analyst or a trade press journalist or somebody who's, done or supervised hundreds and thousands of interviews with public servants about IT, how it's used, how much is being spent, and so forth. And a couple of decades of that sort of makes you start to, wonder what it's all about. Now, we were asked to talk today about Government 2.0. And I feel that has a sort of an aspiration to be quite different from government as is. I feel there's an implication of that sort. And the term was truly transformative government, and I think we set that against transformational government, which is the known present government IT strategy, which I know some of the speakers we've heard from today have certain issues with, and it sort of sits there in the middle of what we're talking about as something which is either fine or fatally flawed, or potentially fixable. And we'll cover that. So I thought we'd talk about transformational government and users, because it does purport to be a user-centric and a user-centred strategy. There are clear challenges and problems for each of the different parties involved. A quick word about the government IT community, about the supplier community, and sort of us, customers, patients, taxpayers. I've been pursuing this online conversation called Ideal Government, which is a multi-author blog, and I'll explain why we did it and what it came up with and what it then led to. And then there's obviously other things looking further afield, which it's going to take to get the culture right. So we might finally ask the question, are we going to get it right? And it seems to me that the things missing, I was reading Transformational Government, I was quite into Donny Hathaway at the time and Roberta Flack, and their big, where is the love? And I'm reading this thing, where is the love in this thing? It's very, very cold. It's user-centred, a bit like, a laser-guided bomb in Fallujah is user-centred. You can see exactly who it's targeted at, and the thing's going to fly down and zap that taxpayer to a customer. But it's not wholly convincing in the language and approach that there's a huge amount of empathy, or that it's seen from the other point of view. And it also, I think, has the difficult and potentially fatal flaw that it's, in a woolly way, built around centralised ID management, which is an issue that we'll come to. I think the main things that it would take to fix it are really soft human virtues, not in the gift of the IT department, but things that we should all have to live our lives properly. Empathy is probably a more sort of acceptable term, perhaps, than the Roberta Flack one. And indeed, humility and the ability to listen, and that has been touched on already. I think there's two sides to that. I think there definitely is a need to learn to listen in a certain way, but the countervailing requirement is that people should express themselves in a really clear and constructive way, and not settle into the habit of really enjoying having a socking great row, which never gets anyone anywhere. I think if there's one discipline which is going to get us out of this fix that we're in, potentially a huge fix, it's not technology. It's not, what's coming out of the labs in 10, 20 years' time, what's hitting the streets. It's not Moore's law. I don't think it's even engineering or treasury or anything like that. I think it's design. I think the designers have the experience and the vocabulary and the structured tools and techniques to solve the problem of transformational government. And we have in this country a fantastic community of designers. They used to design widgets and route masters and stuff, and now they design services. And they really understand what you feel like at every stage of going through the creation of a service with a financial institution, or what it feels like when you go through registering a bereavement or whatever it is. And the funny thing is, they're just not used in public services. They're certainly not used in online government IT services. At the fringes, in the margins, a bit in education and health. So you're seeing a little bit of it. But I think those are the people who can explain how we solve this question. Now, it's very challenging for all the main communities involved. John Suffolk leads a professionalising huge community of government IT professionals. There's CIOs for every department, and he's making great strides in making them work in a collegiate way and challenge each other when one of them wants to go off in a particular direction. It's not John who says, right, I'll hold your budget. It's the group. And I think he's done something impressive, which we haven't seen in other disciplines in government, which is to get a cross-departmental consensus and challenge, which brings the whole group along. But there are some really tough things. The grade ones, on top of the CIO profession, tend to see them as, superannuated project managers who've managed to bust the pay grades a few times, and so they're a bit cross with them. They're not going to help them out and do them any favours. They're sort of saying, look, sort out that IT, not that I really care about it. When things happen, like, 25 million records are lost, it's a complete shock to the people at the top of government, because they had no idea that this was all run in this sort of way. And all the other permanent secretaries are thinking, hang on, Paul Gray, he was the most competent out of all of us. How did he get the best IT department? And he's gone. I'm not feeling very secure suddenly. So there's inquiries in every department saying, oh, what's happening? And wow, I never realised. And on the Information Commissioner's desk, it's piling up all these data breaches, and we're seeing more and more of them coming out every 2 more laptops lost from MOD in the papers today. I mean, the Open Rights Group, of which I should also plead an affiliation, being on the board, they keep a wiki page of all these government data losses. It's a huge document, and it's growing, faster than Moore's Law. So, challenges for government CIOs, their bosses see them as project managers, and they're employed to sort of keep a lid on all the problems, and to sort of manage the profession and get people to manage down. But they need to manage up. The real problems are above them and all around on the board. And they need to be the sort of people who can communicate with the board and change how they think, so that the parameters in which they're working are changed. And that's a huge challenge that they find difficult. Also, we're talking about government too. I mean, the first half of this session was all about getting IT projects right, but suddenly there's this explosion of social networking, the contemporary internet and everything it brings that we'll hear more about from Tom in a mo, and we heard some from Jerry. It's wholly anti-hierarchical. It just spills out all over the place and changes stuff. And government isn't like that. Government's totally hierarchical. So no one in government wants to know about this. It completely cuts across their expectations and structures of power and how they like to control the world and this kind of thing. So it's not very easy for the government CIO profession to bring this message to government, even if they understood it, which they generally don't, because they generally have a previous generation who sort of grew up managing IT projects before the contemporary internet sort of took the flavour it now has. So they're trying to create a profession and keep morale up and recruit people in a climate which used to be, oh, your IT projects fail, and now it's, you don't care about people's data and you leave it lying around in taxi cabs and in the post and all this kind of stuff. It's difficult. It's very difficult. And then they're trying to do all that inside a political culture which is about saying, oh, well, we're right and who cares and I'm not going to listen. But actually, good IT projects need to be based entirely on listening to customers and incredibly customer-focused. So, do the IT suppliers have all the answers? They invented this stuff, you think they understand it? Well, not really. I mean, in government, they're just taken on to meet a very specific requirement, which may or may not work. Maybe the minister made the wrong decision. But, everyone carries on as if it is the only thing they can do. When we research the relationship between large suppliers and their large clients, the biggest issue the large clients in government had is understanding what their customers in turn, the pupils and patients and applicants for welfare, what do they want and how do they want it delivered? So there isn't really a clear customer voice coming through this all in how we decide what we set up and how it's done and what people feel about it and what they really need. NGOs can help an awful lot, but there's a huge mistrust of NGOs. I mean, they're very outspoken, they're very frank, and all this. It's all a bit frightening, I had the Open Rights Group had done some work on e-voting, and one of our very good clients was talking. They're very dangerous people, those. No, really, I hang out with them all the time. They're great. No, really. What they've said about e-voting is, I said, you should listen to it and talk. Oh no, I don't think our clients would like that at all. If we were seen to talk to these sort of ponytailed weirdos. Actually, you learn so much more by punting a bit of money their way than paying some sort of public relations or public affairs agency, £1,000 a day, thousands of pounds a day to lead you up the garden path. Now, IT suppliers, they're completely confused by government, which has an arcane and complicated and weird structure. I mean, just make government navigable. Tell us what's going on. I like Jerry's map that he showed us up there to try and work out who's there that we actually care about. It's very hard to sell into that. And actually, they're completely baffled by the contemporary internet. If you look at exciting things happening online today, it's not the existing IT suppliers, not the contractors to government that did it. They're as surprised by it as anyone. So, what about us? What are the problems for us? Call us taxpayers or customers or prisoners or patients or whatever it is. Well, first of all, it's very expensive. I mean, depending on whether you count in people and all this kind of stuff. It's about £18 billion a year. If anyone wants detail, talk to Shay afterwards. She sits on the largest team of analysts and the largest database of government IT spend there is. But it's a lot of money, but that's just the IT. I mean, the fraud, the mistakes, the inappropriately provided services are 10 times as expensive as that. No one ever really asks what we want in the public services that are delivered through IT. No one listens when we've got a view. I don't think anyone cares. If you look at the correspondence between the NAO and the Audit Commission, it's going to cost us £5,000 to encrypt this data that we don't need to send you. Oh, that won't do at all. You know, no one actually cares about the data and the fact that people mind if you let their bank account details get out everywhere, as Jeremy Clarkson found out. And then we're moving towards a world where, you know, Little Britain had us absolutely right. Whatever you want, the computer will say no. And that's just a full and complete answer. You know, it's not all, well, as well as the Orwellian concerns about the future, there's the Kafkaesque concerns. I can't get what I want, and I can't work out why. But if the computer says no, it must be right. And I think that what we're moving towards with, you know, our welfare state, computerized, is a sort of mechanized compassion, which is all about discrimination. There's no point in having these systems unless it's about telling people what they can't have, denying them services. It's going to be very frustrating, and it's not very dignified. You know, leaving aside the whole question of human rights, which my friend Duakorf would blow a fuse about if we had him up here and started talking about it. So, as a sort of commentator and all that, feeling that everything was going the wrong way and nothing we were doing was remotely helpful, I tried to do an online blog called Ideal Government. It asked the question, you know, what do we want from the enabled public services? Wouldn't it be better if anyone who complains cares? Let's tell the better side of it. It's great fun. We quickly worked out that actually contemporary design is all about participation. We've heard that in some of the questions from the floor this morning. We worked out there are really quick wins that you can reuse what works. Some mates of Tom's set up directionless gov, where, you know, if you search on a government site on the left, it'll give you the direct gov stuff, 50 million quid's worth of replies, which are self-referential and internalising. And on the right, it'll have Google for government. It'll give you exactly what you want. and also, and this is really, I've learned so much from the speakers we've heard from earlier, Ross and the people at FIPR, that there's a whole set of ways in which you could build systems which people trust, not simply in a technical sense, but in a social sense. There's an anthropology of who people trust and why, which we should be very heedful of. I'll skip over the more detailed kind of descriptions of what we learned through that, but that's just a conversation amongst people who are into it, which very quickly came up with effectively an alternative IT strategy. I should say, focusing on customers is absolutely a core part of government policy in theory, in the CSR Service Transformation Agreements. And Sir Gus O'Donnell said, we need more innovative ways of conveying to the public service leaders that transformation is all about the customer. So given that challenge, we thought we'd go to these service designers and say, look, design us something to tell senior officials that it's all about the customer. I called it the sensational ideal government walkthrough experience. So thank heavens we engaged some designers who came up with something much more sensible called the Public Office. And here it is. It's a workshop. It was set up by Cable, inspired by work from the National Consumer Council, with support from industry who wanted to work differently, and then created by Central St Martin's College of Art and Design. And essentially, the starting point is that we have made improvements, but it doesn't feel good enough yet for punters. It's expensive and costly, and there isn't good satisfaction. So we engaged a lovely ethnographic researcher who took his video camera out to 5 families and just said, you're going through complicated situations. You've got breast cancer and a dad who's dying. You're a single dad. You're, homeless and you've got kids in school and you're being moved. What do you actually need? What's it like? What does it feel like from your point of view? And the astonishing thing is how articulate, how good-humoured, how tolerant, how expert these people become in the situation that they have. So, for example, they just can't get the right information. Surely I'm not the first person to have breast cancer. Why do I have to wring the information out of the system? Sure, I'm not the person who's sick and has got a dad dying at the same time. Why is it so hard? This doesn't cost money to get people the right information. It's absolutely normal to be a single dad and try and maintain a relationship with your son. He has to go homeless for 6 months to get in the housing. Why is that? It seems very strange. She is being told to go and live in Huntingdon, where she was a victim of domestic abuse already, and her children have just settled down in Cambridge. It's not one episode in her life. There are several episodes. They're connected. They're a family. You can't take one part of it in isolation. And this is Shana, who was talking about having to drag information out. And she's had to learn so much about managing the condition that she has. How much time?
No, you've really only got about a couple if we're going to spend time.
So what we found was that there are some really common principles which cost no money and are generally information-based, which come across those. And you can present questions to service designers who actually came up with a whole set of principles, which we've got a booklet, we've got the slides, you can send these things out. But the point I wanted to make is that when everyone involved focuses together around the story from the user's point of view, there's an incredible harmony which we haven't really observed much in the discourse about how we sort out government IT, because they all want to sort it out, because they're all mindful, they're all saying, I've got a mother-in-law who's just like that, They share the problem. I'm going to skip through all these, there's far too many. Anyway, it worked. Some senior people came, they really liked it, it worked, we're going to try and take it to other people and other places, we'd like to do it in local authorities, we'd like to take it to every government department, and opposition and everyone welcome, and to specific service providers. So, we've had a blog with comments, we've done a load of dinners to talk about this, we've done the public office, and there's two things I want to say about it today. We're launching a competition called Mind the Gap with our partners Think Public, and this is aimed at anyone who thinks a public service can be better. To win the E, or the we, just describe a public service and say what it should have been like. Practice the aspiration of where you think it would be nice. And then we're doing a Machinima Britain competition for animators to tell future political leaders what sort of country we want to live in. So, there's loads of other stuff that's needed. That's not my job. I'm just trying to do my bit. That's it, really. We talked about transformational government, the challenges and problems, why we thought doing ideal government was a sensible response. There are other things that will take. And the one I'd mention is, in Gateway 0, can we please say, is there evidence of customer demand for this problem? And if there isn't, can we just stop it right there? Would that be all right? Will we get it right? Of course we will. We'll get there one way or another, through compromise. But our cause is just and must prevail, as the Cliff Bonfire Society in Lewis so rightly says. We'll get there with some weird British compromise, and it'll be fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.